is Amy Rogers, and I'm the Business Manager for IT and Computing Vocational Qualifications at Pearson. And this session has been organized to give you first an overview of the development of the new suites, to talk about the rationale behind the two new Btec suites for computing and IT, to review the course content of each suite, talk about the main changes, which will include details on employer engagement and the specialist qualifications, and finally to outline the main resources that we have to help you with this. And I'll take questions at the end. Are you in?
No.
You're not in?
I'm waiting. I need a different login, so I'm waiting.
Okay. I've also got my subject advisor, Tim Brady, here with me, who will be helpful in answering questions. Okay, so before we look at the details of the suite, I really want to talk to you a little bit about the changing environment. Now, I'm sure many of you are aware of the Wolf Report. In 2011, the government set out proposals for the 16 to 19 study programs in England, and this included requirement for substantial qualification at the heart of delivery. You probably are all aware that the funding also changed in England, so that funding was based on the number of hours, typically 540 at level 3, rather than specifically linked to a qualification. And the aim of this was to discourage education providers from putting students in on a number of short courses that would not be of benefits to students. So I'm just going to change the slide now. I'm just giving you a bit of background so you understand the rationale for the development of some aspects of the qualification. Okay, so the next step was the design of the criteria for these substantial qualifications and the accountability measures, the first of which were published in 2014. Now, in 2014, qualifications had to conform to the first three criteria you can see here. They had to be a minimum of 150 guided learning hours if they were applied generals, or 360 if they were tech levels. They needed to be supported with letters from higher education and employers, and they needed to have a clear purpose. So in 2014, Btec Nationals were put forward to these first lists, and most of them got on. We had 93 tech levels, that's 34% of all tech levels, and 57% of applied generals, that's 52% of all applied generals. On this slide, the changes you can see here outlined in red are the changes that have been made to be put on the 2016 list. Now, this applies to achievement at age 18. And if you're not aware, and sort of by way of explanation, the lists are published for learners starting at 16, and it is assumed that the learners go on for 2 years. So the 2016 list is for learners, but applies to 2018. The current list is called the 2017 list, so that applies to learners who started their course in 2015. So the next list, which will be published, which is for 2018, the full criteria you can see on this page applies. This means that qualifications being taught in 2016 will only count and appear on lists if they conform to the full criteria. So if we look in turn at the content highlighted in red, the new requirement is for there to be 60% for applied generals or 40% for tech levels mandatory content. This is a lot more than many of the Btecs at the moment, and the main reason for this is because employers in higher education have said they need to understand better that students have all covered a similar core area of learning. With regard to assessment, this is now 40% for applied generals and 30% for tech levels in terms of external assessment, and this depends on the type of qualification. The DFE's reasoning for this is that external assessment provides a benchmark of comparability across the country and gives employers and higher education confidence that students have a thorough understanding of the fundamentals. Now, I think a big point here is that external assessment doesn't mean that they have to be formal exams. The Department for Education definition has become broader over the last few years, and this means that assessment can cover a range of things, including tasks. So you'll see when we look at the assessment section that there are a number of tasks included. They're not all just formal exams. Okay, finally, the requirement for employer involvement. This is included in tech levels only. I'm going to say a little bit more about this when we look at the detail of the qualification. But to summarize, this slide shows you the vocational reform in England, and this shows you the new criteria from 2016 that must be applied in order for qualifications to count in performance measures, and this is for all awarding organizations who are offering vocational qualifications. Okay, so just moving on to look at the two different types of qualifications for vocational. The vocational sector, the two categories are applied general qualifications and tech level qualifications. So applied general qualifications are advanced level 3 qualifications that equip students with transferable skills and knowledge. They're for post-16 students wanting to continue their education through applied learning, and they fulfill entry requirements for a wide range of higher education, either by meeting the entry requirements directly in their own right or being accepted alongside of other qualifications at the same level. The second type of qualification are tech levels. These are level 3 technical qualifications on a par with A levels and recognized by employers. They're for post-16 students wishing to specialize in a specific industry, occupation, or occupational group, and they equip students with specialist knowledge and skills, enabling entry into apprenticeships or other employment or progression to related higher education courses. In some cases, these qualifications provide a license to practice or exemption from professional exams. And as I mentioned, the key difference for tech levels is the new requirement to have employer involvement in the delivery assessment. This means that educational providers must provide evidence that all students have had the opportunity for meaningful employer involvement. Okay, and as I've said, this applies to all qualifications, not just Btecs, all qualifications that are put forward for the 2018 lists. It applies to students age 18, completing a course in 2018, and that applies to students starting a 2-year course in 2016. And we've submitted all of the qualifications that I'm going to show you today for the 2018 lists, and we expect to hear from the Department of Education over the next couple of weeks on the listing. Okay, just moving on to look at the current suite, which many of you are teaching, next to the new Btec Nationals. The current suite that's on the 2017 list, that will not be eligible for the 2018 list. I don't think anyone's qualifications on the 2017 list is eligible for the 2018 list. And the reason for this is because they don't have the necessary amount of mandatory content or external assessment. And if they're tech levels, they don't have the mandatory requirement for employer involvement. But having said that, I put this slide up because not all centers require qualifications to be on performance tables. So if this is not a key driver for your center, you can remain on the QCF qualification, as this qualification will be funded to 2018, and they will continue to count on the UCAS tariff. So the main thing to point out here is that they won't count beyond the performance measures for the 2017 tables. Has anyone got any questions on the sort of background and the rationale and the changes to the Department for Education? No? I don't know if you have the ability to ask questions, but so this is really the first section. I just wanted to take you through the background and what is required to be on the performance list, and also to let you know how long you can stay on the QCF qualifications. So if there aren't any questions on that, then I will move on to look at the new suite. So this slide shows on the left the current QCF qualification. That IT Information Technology QCF is in 5 sizes. The certificate is 180 to 200 guided learning hours. The subsidiary diploma is 360 to 420 guided learning hours. The 90 credit diploma, that's 540 guided learning hours. The diploma is 720 to 830 guided learning hours, and the extended diploma is 1080 guided learning hours. Okay, so on the right, you can see the two new suites, and you can see that the evolution of the Btec Level 3 in IT has included dividing the current qualification into two distinct suites, one for computing and one for information technology. And as I mentioned earlier, the reason for this is to respond to employer and higher education requirements for Btec students studying information technology to demonstrate a common core of knowledge and skills, and therefore provide better support for student progression pathways to higher education and employment. The difference between the two suites is as follows. The computing suite focuses on the design, construction, and use of computers. This includes content on programming languages, data structures, algorithms, and the underlying science of information and computation. The Information Technology Suite focuses on the use of computers in industry, commerce, and the arts, with content including aspects of IT systems architecture, human factors, project management, and the general ability to use computers. Okay, so if you're not clear, I'll just point out here the tech levels and the qualifications intended as applied generals in this suite. So in the light green, the computing courses and the information technology courses. So in the computing, that's the 360, the 510, and the 1080. And in the IT suite, that's the 180, the 360, and the 510. Those are all intended as applied generals. Those are the progression qualifications for students who are intending to continue their learning generally in higher education courses, and it meets the requirements for those. And then the tech levels, those are the courses you can see all the way to the right. Those are the specialist qualifications, which are sometimes a license to practice. Those are for students who are post-16 wishing to specialize in a particular occupational area. That doesn't mean that they can't go on or they don't go on to higher education. They do, but this is the particular category of those four qualifications. Now you're going to see some gaps here. You see two gaps in the computing course and two gaps in the information technology applied general suite. So I should say at this point that what we're looking at is we're looking at phase one of these two new suites. We currently have phase two, which I'll talk to you about as we go through the presentation. Okay, so in the next, that just maps out the basic structure, and you can see what you're moving from and what you're moving to. And in the next couple of slides, I'm going to look at, first of all, the progression qualifications and the three sizes in the computing suite. Oh, I'm not going to do that. Okay, so, sorry, well, I'll stay on this slide, and I will talk you through the computing suite and the three courses you can see there on the right-hand side, in the right-hand box, but on the left-hand side. So you have the 360 qualification. This is designed to support learners who are interested in learning about the computing sector alongside other fields of study, with a view to progressing to a wide range of higher education courses, not necessarily in the computing sector. So a 360 guided learning hour qualification is equivalent to one A level, and if students take that alongside of A levels in or Btecs in perhaps business, this might lead to an HND in business. They could take it alongside A levels in business and psychology and look at a foundation degree in computing management. They might take it alongside art and design and move into a fashion buying and management. The 510 is designed to support learners who wish to...
Level 1. Well, when I say recently, I mean...
Okay, I'm getting some conversation here, so if you want to ask a question, please do. Krasimir, would you like to ask a question?
Should be...
Hello?
It's okay, Amy. I will mute everyone and they can put their hand up if they need to answer a question. That way there's no background noise.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Steve. Okay, so the 510, that's designed to support learners who wish to study computing as a one-year full-time course, or for those who wish to take it alongside another area of complementary or contrasting study as part of a 2-year full-time program. So when the 510 is studied alongside of AS or A levels, perhaps an engineering, a foundation diploma in engineering or construction, students might progress to an HNC in civil engineering. They may take A-level business and move on alongside this and move on to a foundation diploma in business computing with networking or similar. So on the website, in the statements of purpose, you could have a look at the wide range of combinations that you could offer students with these qualifications. And now moving on to the 1080, that's the extended diploma. That's equivalent to 3 A levels. That's designed to support learners who are interested in a 2-year full-time course that meets entry requirements for computer-related study in higher education. And this qualification enables learners to explore a choice of sector areas, enabling progression or employment to courses such as a BSc in computer science, BSc as an information technology practitioner, perhaps a BA in creative digital media. Again, many opportunities for students taking these courses. I think the key points here are that the qualifications have been designed to meet the criteria for performance tables, so they will be publicly recognized and they will be eligible for UCAS points as well as being fully funded. Okay, so moving on to the information technology suite, there's
we do have a question from Anthony.
Okay, Anthony, go ahead. Yes, please. Although you're quite quiet.
Okay, I'll move a bit closer to my microphone. Is that any better?
Thank you. Can you say where you're from, Anthony, please?
From LSST in Lincoln.
Okay.
I'm curious to why the specialist computing courses all seem to be double A level. From our perspective, although we quite like the look of the graph of the computer systems and network support unit, we don't have provision in our timetable to offer this as a double unit. To review that.
Yes. So as I mentioned, this is phase 1, and as part of phase 1, we went out to over 5,000 stakeholders, including centres and HE and employers. And the feedback that we received was that for the tech levels, this size, equivalent of 2A levels, was the one which was most popular. Having said that, we are on phase 2 now. We are continuing to take feedback. And if your feedback is you'd like to see a tech level in a smaller size, that's something which we can certainly look into.
That certainly would be of interest to us. In fact, all 4 of those units, when we looked at the draft of how it would work, it did seem to have so much material before we got to the bits that we're quite interested in delivering. It would be good to see
Okay, so are you interested in a 510 or a 360?
360, I think.
And in terms of pathways, are there particular pathways that you're interested in?
Network support, really, yeah. Systems and network support.
Okay. I'm going to give you the details at the end of the session of contacts. I've made a note of that, but it would be nice to speak further about that, perhaps at the end of the session. Okay, thank you very much. Were there any other questions? I'm not sure I can see the hands. Stephen, are you managing the hands?
Yeah, and that was the only hand.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'll just carry on. Thank you for that question, Anthony. I'll carry on with the IT suite. So there is the 180 guided learning hour that's designed for learners interested in a basic introduction to the study of IT alongside other fields of study, again with a view to progressing to a wide range of higher education courses, but not necessarily in IT. So this leaves their progression options fully open. There's a 360 guided learning hour qualification, which is designed to support learners who are interested in learning about the IT sector alongside other fields of study with a view to progressing to, again, a wide range of higher education courses. They can take this alongside of maths, physics, science, arts, business, or technology and progress to a very wide range of courses in higher education. The 5-10 guided learning hour is designed to support learners who wish to study computing as a one-year full-time course, or for those wishing to take it alongside another area of complementary or contrasting study. And this suite is currently in development at the moment with a 720 and a 1080. Looking at those sizes, I'm looking at applied general qualifications for those two sizes. Market feedback has not been for the information technology to move to a tech level, but again, I'd be interested in taking your feedback on that if you would prefer to see those in a tech level. I'll move on to the 4 specialist qualifications, which are part of the computing suite, and these are intended as tech levels, which are qualifications for students, 16-year-old students who have a clear idea about the occupation they wish to pursue. They equip students with specialist knowledge that they need for a recognized career path. So the 4 specialist qualifications that we're offering are all 720 guided learning hours, or as Anthony has said, equivalent of 2 A levels, and they enable learners to explore a choice of sector areas, and these have been fully mapped to national occupational standards, so you and your students can get a clear picture of the transferable skills that they will develop. And in a couple of slides, we're going to look at the detail of what's in these qualifications. But really what this means for you here is that the level 3 suites in IT and computing give you 10 different options across 5 different sizes. So we hope you'll be able to find the right qualification for your learners. Okay, that's a broad introduction. So now we can look at the detail of what's in the suites. And this slide really is just to talk you through the color coding. We have units color-coded. Green is where you set and mark the assignments. Those are the ones that you'll be familiar with. That's the internal assessment. The new areas are the external assessment. Purple is for task-based assessment, which we set and mark for you. And blue is for written exams. It's a form of assessment which I'm sure will be very familiar to you all. Okay, so if we look at the computing suite, this slide shows the mandatory content for the progression qualifications. So the mandatory units are 90 and 120 guided learning hours, and all optional units are 60 guided learning hours. So the breakdown of the mandatory units is as follows. In the 360, that contains 4 units, 3 of which are mandatory, 2 are externally assessed. That gives a mandatory content of 83% and an external assessment of 58%. The 5-10 guided learning hours equivalent in size to 1.5 A levels. That's 6 units, 4 of which are mandatory, 2 are external. That's 77% mandatory content and 41% external assessment. The 1080, that's equivalent in size to 3 A levels. That's 13 units, 7 of which are mandatory, 4 are external. The mandatory content is 67%, and the external assessment is 42% for this qualification. As I mentioned to you before, the reason that we have this strong mandatory core is that both higher education and employers wanted to see this stronger common core, and you will find that in the new qualification, some of the titles differ, but there is a lot of familiar content as well. So in this qualification, you'll see that while units 1 and 3 are entirely new, the content of unit 2 maps to the content of the existing IT Unit 2. Unit 4, Software Design and Development, that maps to the current Unit 6. Unit 7 maps to 713 and 32 of the current qualification. Unit 8, Business Applications of Social Media, that maps to 1 and 33. And Unit 9, The Impact of Computing, maps to the current Unit 4. So we will have a mapping document for those of you who are migrating over to the new Btec Nationals. Okay, so moving on to the Information Technology Suite for the progression qualifications. the 180 guided learning hour, that's equivalent in size to half an A level. That has 2 units, both are mandatory, one of which is external. That gives a mandatory content of 100%, external assessment of 50%. The 360 guided learning hour, that's equivalent in size to 1 A level, 4 units, 3 of which are mandatory, 2 are external. That's mandatory content of 83% and external assessment of 58%. And the 510 equivalent to 1.5 A levels, that gives you 6 units, 4 of which are mandatory and 2 are external. That's a mandatory content of 76% and external assessment of 41%. So here, Unit 1, Information Technology Systems, that maps to the current Units 3 and 4. Unit 2, Creating Systems to Manage Information, maps to Units 2 and 18 in the current qualification. Unit 3, Social Media and Business, is in a new unit, while Unit 4, Programming, maps to Units 14, 15, and 16 of the current qualification. And as I mentioned to you earlier, the largest sizes for this suite are currently in development. I'm looking at a wide range of optional units, including vendor content. And some of the topics which we're looking at include business analytics, which would include big data, database development, customer support and management, project management, test design and development, the Internet of Things and controllers, infrastructure design and management, IT systems integration, cloud and software as a service, alongside the more traditional units of website development, computer games development, mobile applications, etc. So I would be interested in hearing your feedback on the sorts of units that you'd like to see included in the larger sizes.
Amy, Anthony has another question.
Yes, Anthony. Thank you. No, but if you, I'll be very quiet.
I've got 2 questions.
Yes.
You mentioned in that section there you were talking about vendor units.
Yes.
My understanding of vendor units would be things like VMware units and Microsoft and Cisco units, but the things
yes.
you described didn't sound like vendor units. Do you
know
additional vendor units you're looking at?
Yes. So I just gave you a broad range, and as I said, I'm interested in taking your feedback on what you'd like to see included. So that information would be very helpful.
Second question is about the unit social media in business. We've been looking at this one as a potential option for us, but there are some tremendous challenges that we can see in delivering that unit. For us to sort of navigate through the school safeguarding agenda, where there are lots of senior managers and safeguarding officers who are extremely concerned about, shall we say, softening an approach to children being able to use social media during the sort of education part of the day. But the units seem to pretty much require access to the most popular social media outlets to function. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm just going to see if my subject advisor is... Oh, you can't hear him. Okay. So I've got my subject advisor, Tim Brady. The question was on Unit 3, the social media and business, and the difficulties for schools. We've actually raised this, and we have some guidance to come out to you on that. So we've organized...
Yeah, I would say...
I'm just going to... I might pass my microphone over so Tim can... Hang on a second. You can introduce yourself and focus on the social media.
Yes, hello. My name's Tim Brady, subject advisor. The social media unit, I would say 75% of the way to putting together delivery notes that would work in any setting. And we think we know of a solution for the last bit as well, but we're putting it together at the moment. So I think even in the most locked down social media school setting, the unit, we will be able to provide a good, complete set of solutions for how you can deliver that successfully.
Give us a flavour of how that might look.
Yeah, one would model a company with an internally set up institutions, so it would be it wouldn't have to be real companies. The teacher would deal with the social media interactions and pepper the accounts with sample, replies, connections, likes, demotes, promotes, etc. And we're just looking at how some tools can be provided whereby the data that has to be analysed in the last part can also be provided by a teacher, so that it can all be, so to speak.
The teacher would be able to use services like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I'm not sure. I haven't been down that far of a route yet. I don't see why teachers wouldn't be, but maybe we could take it offline, and you could let me know if you have other particular concerns on that.
I know a lot of schools don't allow their employees to use Facebook, for example, during business day. That's not common.
Yeah, it's it.
If teachers were given access to these systems, then the students would contribute through them and see that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a really well made point, and I think it's something we could have done more on before now, but we're well on the way to seeing our way through a good delivery guide now. We're just finishing that off, really. But really good points.
Okay, I'm back here. I'm sharing headset, so I couldn't hear what you were saying, Anthony. But I can say that this is something which has been raised in the face-to-face launches, and I can echo what Tim has said, that we have taken it up and we have a delivery plan for this, which we'll be putting out to. Well, it'll go on the website. Okay. Any more questions? Can you hear me? I
can.
Oh, you can hear me?
I can very well.
Anthony, can you hear me?
I hear you
very
clearly.
Okay, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, that certainly goes some way to answering it. Still got some concerns, but it sounds like more documentation is coming our way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much in hand. It has been raised, and I've seen some draft delivery plans on it to address those problems.
What is the procedure for us to identify potential additional vendor units that we'd be interested to see?
Send either me or Tim an email, and I'll give you the details of that at the end of the session. Okay. All right, shall I? Any more queries?
Nothing else is showing up at the moment.
Okay.
Okay,
so I'll just move on to talk about, I think I'm going to move on to the tech levels, or the specialist qualifications which are intended as tech levels. So we have 4 of these at the moment. For the diploma in computing for creative industries, there are 10 units, 6 of which are mandatory. That's 67% mandatory content, and there's 2 units which are externally assessed, and that is 33% of the guided learning hours. For the specialist in diploma in computer science, the arrangement is the same. There are 10 units, 6 of which are mandatory, and 2 externally assessed units, again 67%, 33%. The next 2 qualifications, computer systems and network support and business information systems, both have 10 units, all are mandatory, so that is 100% of that qualification is mandatory, and 2 units are externally assessed, and that is 33% of that qualification. I don't think I said, but I should have said, that you can see this information on the website as well. These qualifications have been developed in conjunction with business in conjunction with the trade bodies, the BCS Chartered Institute for IT and TIGA, the Trade Association, representing the gaming industry. Okay, I've got another slide here, and Anthony, this is, I suppose, partly address. Actually, no, I take that back. This you wanted a smaller size. So, some centres have wondered about moving from a 510 to a 1080 and what they could do in the middle. So what I wanted to point out with this slide just before we look at the detail of the units as a whole, is that there is some shared core between the 720 and the 1080 units. So it's not only in units 1 and 3, but also in unit 2, the fundamentals of computer systems, and unit 5, building computer systems. There's an overlap there. There's a difference in the guided learning hours. So the larger unit has more content, but if students did need to move, if they had taken one, they could move to the other, or vice versa. And that is also the same with Unit 6, IT System Security, and Unit 7, IT System Security and Encryption. Again, it's just a difference in the guided learning hours for the qualifications. So if a student was taking the 720 and wanted to move up to a larger diploma, they would do a little bit of addition with the encryption, but they will have done the basis of the unit when they go to do that Unit 7. Okay, so moving on to look at the details of the unit. I apologize, this is a very small, very detailed slide. This is on the website. It's either in the specifications or there's an introductory guide on the website, which I would recommend because it's just 10 pages long and it gives you all the details of the qualifications at a glance. What you can see on this slide, not a lot of green. So that means that what remains is that internal assessment is the foundation of these qualifications, which you're all familiar with. I think the other things which are similar here are that the overall program design and delivery with the mandatory and the optional units, that is what you're familiar with. Many of the units are similar, which I mentioned. Broadly, the range of sizes is the same and the mode of delivery is the same. So I'm just going to toggle over to show you the IT suite. I'll just toggle between the two. And I think the difference between the old QCF and the new nationals are, as I've mentioned, there's a stronger common core, and this is really designed to benefit your students' progression to both higher education and employment. Mandatory units are larger, and that supports the student development of their knowledge of the basics of the sector. And then there is the external assessment, which is really what higher education are looking for, as well as the business environment. The business wants to see that students have taken exams. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to employer engagement. So you may recall this is a requirement in the specialist qualifications
Amy,
only. Yes.
Jump in. Paul Wallen has a question.
Hi, Paul. Where should I move my slide to for you, Paul?
That's the slide I was just mentioning.
Okay.
Unit 19 on this one is the computer networking one, and unfortunately it's only an optional unit on one of the particular courses, and that's the one that probably has the most content that relates to the Cisco CCNA part of the program. I just thought I'd raise that point just to draw people's attention to it. Thanks, Amy.
I'm glad you raised that because that has reminded me of another point that I should talk about in terms of phase 2. So a number of the centres have asked whether we could have more optional units in the larger sizes. So we are currently looking at that. So perhaps having all of the optional units available in the largest size and more optional units available in the 510. And that's something which is on the table at the moment. We're waiting to hear from the Department for Education on the listings and really to get a bit more guidance on how many optional units can be included with and not cannibalize or not change the difference or supersede the tech levels and the applied general qualifications. So that's where it is at the moment, and that might be something which comes into the applied generals as well.
Thanks, Amy.
Okay. Any other questions before I move on? You can always ask questions later. Okay, so
yeah, there is one more just popped up. Paul
Okay.
Philip from the Isle of Wight.
Hello. That one? That slide for you?
Hello, Paul. No.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on if he comes back. That's fine. Okay, so employer engagement is recommended for all. Btec is good practice to involve employers, but it's not required for the applied general qualifications. It is a requirement in the specialist qualifications, and that requirement consists of employer involvement in one mandatory and one optional unit, and that must include meaningful activity. That's the phrase that's been given. So what that means is that employers being involved in some substantive aspect of the teaching and learning that doesn't require students to either attend an employer's premises or employers to go to centers. It could be teaching and learning materials, which could include case studies, project materials, exemplars, or assignments. It could include observations. It might include presentations, guest speakers, technical workshops, but of course those don't have to be face-to-face. They can be done virtually, and assignments, as I've mentioned, or mentoring. And this is something which we're looking at the moment, developing a range of authorized employer briefs, so we'll be able to provide support for you on employer engagement. Okay, I'm going to move on to look at what I suppose is a big change, and that is assessment. So in the next section, I'll look very briefly at the internal assessment. We'll talk about the external assessment, synoptic assessment, and grading and compensation. So assessment in the new Btec Nationals includes a combination of assessment styles, both practical and written, to give students the opportunity to showcase their learning and achievements to best effect. So you see the three broad areas here. Internal assessment is in green, external assessment task is in purple, and examinations are highlighted in blue. As I mentioned earlier, internal assessment remains the cornerstone of the Btecs, and the big headline, I think, with the internal assignments, this is where you make the grading decisions based on the unit criteria. The big headline is that the window for resubmission has been extended from 10 to 15 days. There's a very detailed section on this in section 6 of the specification, and authorized assignment briefs. There are some on the website already. These will be coming out, and there will be authorized assignment briefs for all mandatory units on the website around February, March, and then for all units around June. So you will get authorized assignment briefs and support for these internal units for all units. Now, regarding external assessment, all of the units which are externally assessed are either 90 or 120 guided learning hours, and each assessment is taken under specified conditions, then marked by Pearson, and a grade awarded. So the style of the external assessment used for qualifications are, as I mentioned, examinations, which is the means of checking and applying fundamental knowledge. Examination papers are taken by students at the same time, and tasks are practical scenario-based activities where learners take assessments again during a defined window to demonstrate their understanding of a vocational task. We're going to talk about grading in a minute, but I'll just point out now that grading is not intended to be a hurdle for external assessment, and Btecs have designed grading with compensation. So students will be graded according to their overall mark across the course, which means that they do not need to pass every unit. So unlike the next generation Btec first, there isn't a core of units which have to be passed, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute. It's also detailed in the full specifications in section 10. Okay, so I'll just move on to talk about the quality assurance model. process, the stages are largely the same. The three key headline changes to support your teaching are, first of all, that Btec levels 1 through 3 programs will all be under the same standards verifier. The second change is that standardization material will be available much earlier. It will be available over the summer for you. And then finally, that sampling will be staggered. The main process remains the same: standardization training for the entire program team at the beginning of the course, support for you to create your assignments, such as the authorized assignment briefs I just mentioned, so that you have examples of best practice, early involvement of your standards verifier, so you'll have your standards verifier available in plenty of time to provide support up front, and then the quality management review visit, which ensures that your quality nominee and all the program team have the support they need to create and grade assessments to the highest standard. Okay, so just turning to look at external assessments. We look at the tasks first. You'll probably be most familiar with tasks. In the computing suite, these cover Unit 3, Planning and Management of Computer Projects. And in this unit, students study how project planning and management concepts are applied to computing projects, including gathering key information they need to run a successful project, the production of a project initiation document, presenting the business case to meet the organizational needs, the planning, task scheduling, budgeting, risk management, time management, quality management, and the communication with stakeholders throughout the life cycle of the project implementation, and then project closure and project review. So in this assessment, students are assessed on their ability to plan and manage a computing project based on information in a scenario which they're given at the start of the task. The task is in two parts. So part A is a maximum of 3 hours in a 1 week period, and part B is a maximum of 2 hours in a 3-day period. So both periods are set within the normal exam window and completed using a computer and submitted electronically. And that's a 66-mark paper. For Unit 4, this is a synoptic unit that builds on the programming skills and knowledge that students cover in Unit 1. Students develop the ability to design, create, test, and evaluate software to provide a solution to a problem. And the assessment task provides students with a scenario and requires them to develop an effective design solution, produce the software, test the software, evaluate the stages of the development process, and then the effectiveness of the final solution. So for this, students must use Python 3.4 or later, or one of the C family programming languages. They will have access to a data dictionary for the chosen language, and this task is completed under supervised conditions over 6 hours in a 1 week period, which will be set in the normal exam window. For the IT suite, it's Unit 2. This unit examines the structure of data, its origins, how efficient data designs follow through an effective and useful database, and students examine the purpose and structure of relational database management systems, methods and techniques to design relational database solutions. And the task requires students to design, create, test, and evaluate a relational database system to a given brief. An information booklet is released to students at the start of the 10-hour supervised assessment period, and the task is undertaken during a 1 week assessment period. Okay, so the next type of assessments are exams. These are available twice a year, and students are allowed 1 retake. For the computing suite, the units that are examined are Unit 1, Principles of Computer Science. This unit covers the principles that underpin all areas of computer science. Students study standard methods and techniques used to develop algorithms, programming paradigms, types of programming and markup languages. They develop computational thinking skills to analyze, develop, and evaluate algorithms, computer code, and solutions, and ensure that these are fit for purpose. Students are asked to respond to a range of short and extended questions in 4 set tasks to show their ability to apply their computational thinking skills to solve problems through short answer questions, extended tasks, and diagrammatical explanations. Unit 2, Fundamentals of Computer Systems. This explores the way computer system components work together individually to store and process data, the way in which data is transmitted and used by computer systems. And here students will explore the concepts and implications of the use of and relationship between hardware and software that form computer systems, the implications of computer architecture models, and the impact of the relationship between component parts, the characteristics, concepts, and implications of computer data representation methods, how data is organized and transmitted, the use of logic and data flow within computer systems. And again, this is a scenario-based assessment. There will be 4 scenarios, and students will be asked to respond to a range of short and extended answer questions across these 4 scenarios. And then finally, it's the same format for the information technology suite. Unit 1, Information Technology Systems, enables students to look at the relationship between hardware and software that forms an IT system, the way systems work individually and together, and students will explore the use of digital devices, peripheral devices, computer software, and emerging technologies in IT systems, the concepts, processes, and implications of transferring data within and between IT systems, online systems and online communities, the benefits and the risks, issues, implications of storing and transmitting information in digital form, and the implications and impact on individuals and organizations of using IT systems, including legal, moral, ethical, and other issues relating to IT systems. Okay, so this, I should mention, it's a synoptic unit, available twice a year, and we'll look at synoptic units, what we mean by that. I'm not sure how many of you understand what we mean by synoptic units, but these are units that allow students to demonstrate the skills and knowledge that they've learned from different units within the qualification. So really, it's not a type of assessment, it's more a form of planning and delivery. Synoptic units need to be taught alongside of other units rather than as discrete units themselves. And this is something which we support centres with in scheme of works and planning, which are available online or coming online now. And then if you want to attend some of the Getting Ready to Teach sessions, we can offer you support on the development of delivery methods for these units. Okay, are there any questions on the assessment? No, then I'll just move on to the compensation, which I think will be of interest to centres. As I mentioned, there is compensation in the new nationals. This means that students don't have to pass every unit. Each unit is individually graded, and what comprises the student's final qualification is the contribution of all of the units. So students are graded according to their overall marks, which means that they do not need to pass the external units, provided they have a sufficient number of marks overall. So what we have developed is a new N grade for external units, and this means that if you narrowly miss a pass, you'll still get points for the unit. Okay, so just to summarize, cornerstone remains internal assessment, as I've said. You will find that a variety of assessment styles are available to students both in the internal and the external assessment. The internal timescales for submission of internal assessment, that's been increased to benefit students from 10 to 15 days. And the inclusion of the external tests, the exams, and the synoptic assessments are designed to benefit your students, to provide an opportunity for them to demonstrate their skills and knowledge alongside learners within their cohort and between cohorts, which means that employers and higher education institutions are going to have a robust process for their selection. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to talk about support. If there aren't any further questions on either the content or on the assessments. Okay, I'll just do this quite quickly. I think we were hoping to get this done within the hour. We've got another minute, so within that minute, I'll just remind you or say that in many cases, Btec support is free. You certainly don't need to purchase anything in order to be able to teach Btecs. You'll see already that we have specifications on the website as well as sample assessment material. There are some delivery guides, and those will be coming online in January, February, along with the authorized assignment briefs, sample marked learner work. Tim Brady, subject advisor, is available to provide support and advice, and also to take your feedback on these qualifications. As I mentioned earlier, this is phase 1. These are qualifications which have been submitted to the 2018 lists. We are currently working on phase 2, which will be for qualifications submitted to the 2019 list. So for first teaching in 2017, we'd very much like to hear what you like about this new suite and what you'd like to see more of, or what additions or changes you'd like to see, because then we can continue to design the qualifications. Okay, there is My Btec. I don't know how many of the centers use this, but this is an online digital tool which has recently been upgraded with a series of new features. This is a service which allows you to manage all of your Btecs from one place. It means you can have complete visibility for all of your Btec courses and assessment plans, internal verification, and learner progress in one place. Okay, and that's across all of the Btec suites. That works so you can put all of your learning in one place. Finally, there is paid for support, and that's in the form of student books, which many of you know about. There's the Active Digital Service, which is an online independent learning resource for students to be used in the classroom and at home. And then there are revision guides to Btec Revise, and these are currently being developed and will be available in the case of the student books and the Btec Revise for the new suites in the middle of 2016, so around June time. And training courses, there are Getting Ready to Teach, which some of you attended. There are webinars continuing. There are training sessions. If there is particular training that you'd like to have, we can also look at that. Okay, so that's really all I wanted to say. That is Tim Brady, who's been speaking to you alongside of me. Those are the contact details. Are there any questions from folks about what you've seen or heard, or any feedback?
Yep, Masada has a question.
Okay.
Amy, thanks for the details about all the units. So just a quick question to ask you. Basically, as it looks to me that all the old CCNA 1, 2, and the whole courses have been now disintegrated and has been integrated into different units. Is it correct? Isn't it?
I think that's for the suites that you're currently looking at. So for these the 6 applied generals and the tech levels, that is correct. That you will find that information throughout the units, and we're having that mapped at the moment.
Right. And just one last question to ask you. I think we did email me kindly. The deadline for students to enroll for the IT Essential course to be accepted, that is the end of December.
Sorry, you know what? Can I? I'm afraid I'm being moved from my spot, so I didn't actually hear that. Can you repeat that?
No, the IT Essential course.
Yes.
It's the old course to be recognized. Yes, the students have been enrolled.
I think I might ask Paul Wallen to answer that.
Okay.
In fact, it's probably better if I answer it. Hi, I'm Andrew Smith. I'm also the Senior Standards Verifier. That doesn't matter. When you can register with the old IT Essentials, when version 6 comes out, you can register with that, and a unit that encompasses that you can continue to use.
Right, okay. It is about 2 years, did you say?
I didn't say anything about 2 years at all. I said that the old IT Essentials, you can register for that and use that. And when the new version 6 comes out, you can register for that and use that as well.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.